Good afternoon, folks. So what we're going to try and do very quickly is to try and sum up the day, which is not easy. So first of all, Eimear McNally, whom you will have seen out in the lobby, the artist, has been working away, and she has produced or helped to co-produce 2 artifacts. So we're going to look at these for a minute, and then I'll try and sum up and make sense of the day. And I want to thank Eimear. This, all of you will have been involved perhaps in one way or another, is a map of the biodiversity sector. And it's interesting because you can see all the colours, all the names, all the connections, and I think that there's a lot to that. There's a lot of players here in the room. So if we can go on to the second graphic then, and we can see which, again, she was trying to bring together some of the ideas from the 3 sessions, and then I will sum those up. So one of them was what we were doing in this room here, engagement. Second one, planning for the future. And thirdly, investing in nature. And so, again, Eimear, listening to the debate, engaging with people, was looking at those 3 areas. And the little mind map will appear in a minute. I'm not going to give what I call a scientific summing up. That would not be possible. It's what I call an impressionistic summing up. So this is her impressions, and then I will give you mine. But there's some really interesting quotes there, and I'll let you think about those, engaging, which was what went on in this room here. I'll talk a little bit more about that because I stayed in this room for a good bit of the time, and there's some lovely lessons that come out of that. The second one then, planning, and the third one, investing. But the first quote, so I'm mostly going to work on quotes from people, what I heard during the day. I didn't make any of it up. The best words, the first 2 words that I heard in the morning from a young fella from Pobbleskull Coleman in Middleton. I don't know if you're still here, those lads who won a prize today. Shane was his name, and he whispered to his pal, fingers crossed. Are you still here? So they may have got the bus back or the train back to Cork, but I thought that kind of in a way summed up the optimism or the hope for a lot of people in the room. Yes, there is a lot of crisis, and we've heard a lot of talk and despondency and so on, but also there is a sense in the room of fingers crossed of some sort of expectation, what Kieran O'Keefe called kindling the energy of the room. I thought that was very good. So then looking at the 3 sessions, just working from this side across, investing, that really worked at 2 levels. First of all, the idea of investing in nature, and as Jane Stout said, why would we do that? We would invest in nature because it's our life support system. I think that's really well summarised. And there was a lot of discussion in a number of rooms about doing that, first of all, at the micro level, at the farm level. And various farmers today, Donald Sheehan, Brendan Joyce, others, Dolores Byrne, would have talked about, we have done this, or we are beginning to do it, the session that was chaired by Brendan Dunford. So progress has been made in the last 2 decades, for sure, in trying to actually invest in nature in a very practical sense. People can understand that it's fair, it's transparent, it's working. At a more macro level then, there was a lot of discussion again in those sessions about investing in nature, about the biodiversity expenditure review. So you had Craig Bullock and Rachel Morrison and so on, talking about this number that has been produced in the review, 1.49 billion. So there was a debate about that. How did they come to that? It's over 6 years, and of that, 80% is in the form of subsidies. And you heard from the Minister this morning, a relatively small part of that budget comes from Parks and Wildlife. So again, we're broadening the terms of reference of what do we mean by investing in nature, and rightly so. There's a different mind map coming out in that. And of course then, the whole, let's say, intellectual construct of accounting for natural capital. Eugenie Regan, various people talked about that. And we heard in some of the other rooms, that's abstract, it's difficult, but there is good work being done in that area. When you combine it at the various levels, the farm level, the national level, the investment that's going on, we're beginning to see some tools emerging in investing in nature. And we'll hear more about that again tomorrow at a number of the sessions. On planning for the future, the middle area there, collective responsibility and partnership. I suppose there were 3 recurring themes. First of all, we had to plan in collaboration between climate change and biodiversity. Secondly, planning collaboration between water quality and biodiversity. So this idea of co-management, co-benefits. Marie Archibald from the EPA and a number of people talked about that. And thirdly then, this idea again of co-management between farming and nature. And Micheál and others talked about the European Common Agricultural Policy, the greening of that. But the whole idea again there is, when we talk about planning for the future, okay, again, it can be very abstract, it can be very daunting, but if we bring it down to these levels of co-benefits with climate change, with water, there is a sense again in the room, informally. I talked to a lot of my former colleagues in EPA here, and there's an energy behind the work that's going on in water. And Loco and Bernie White and the people that spoke here today. That's great. There's about 100 people, number of people in this room, a sense of momentum, traction behind water. Similarly, from a political level, you can hear people in the room saying, yes, there's a lot of talk about climate change. And a concern then perhaps that biodiversity is left behind. But again, going back to the fingers crossed, the optimism. On the other hand, by being here today, the 400 people, by having these links, these co-benefits, planning for the future alongside working on water quality, working on climate change adaptation together, each of the three areas is stronger and is more likely to succeed. And then finally, just to go to the area of engaging, and thanks to Brian Nelson and others who summarised some of the key points from that room there. But to make it simple, in the Irish language there's always a great kind of focus on alliteration, on words, where each word starts with the same letter and so on. So people often talk about the 3 Ps and the 7 S's. I've come up with the 7 L's from today. So you can be listing in your own mind, so what are the 7 L's as we go along? But the first one was listen harder. And that was Josepha Madigan this morning. We need to have more two-way dialogue, as it says there, between people, citizens and our agencies, our state, our structures, our formal structures. The idea of listening again to birdsong, what we heard this morning. So listening is the first of the 7 things that we need to do. The second thing then is to learn. Again, it was put forward by Ciarán and others this morning. This is about learning these 2 days. Learning by doing. People were talking about outfall safaris. What do you think of that? Basically looking for septic tank outfalls or sewage treatment outfalls. Sounds great, doesn't it? That was Mark Horton from the Rivers Trust. But again, it's learning by doing, and there were many examples of that. The third L word then is link, which is crucial. We heard of a number of really interesting networks that are linking people together. Mary Mulvey talked about the various scattered communities around uplands in Ireland. We're having tours to visit each other, 13 different areas visiting each other this year. The water and communities sector, there was 150 applications we heard today from Bernie White to the latest round of water and community projects. Again, communities around Ireland coming together, being linked by LOCO. And then there was a talk about the Wetlands Forum. So again, you can see these are examples of linkages where people are learning by doing, learning by talking to each other. Similarly then, linking climate and water and nature together. And then James, congratulations to James who won the poll. What he's doing is the same. The land use policy for Ireland is linking economy, nature and culture or conservation together. So that idea of linking is becoming really important. The integration, the mosaic that's emerging from the few days. The next L word then, listen, learn, link, lead. You can read what Josepha Madigan said in 2 ways this morning. She said, we represent 10% of the budget, others have to lead as well. You could be a little bit disappointed and say, does that mean she's not going to lead? But I didn't take it like that, in fairness. She brought 2 other ministers here for lunch. There was a lot of state agencies here. I got a sense, and we'll get more a sense from her again, and from Michael D. Higgins and so on, of leadership at a national level. But the most impressive leader in a way was the Greta Thunberg of this room today, was a young lad called James Doyle, or James Dunn, is it? From St. Michael's School. James, are you still here? Well done. So, because what he represents is taking responsibility, leadership that each of us, all 400 of us in this room, can and should and will and are able to lead. And he was very clear about that. He really spoke out very strongly. So we need to lead, not just wait for the Josepha Madigans of the world. Yes, they can do it, but that's not going to be enough. The other L word then is local solutions. That became really important. John Fitzgerald said this morning, the local political manifesto of the parties need to include, and if they don't include, as Michael Ewing said, tackle them on the doorstep. Why doesn't it include more references to biodiversity, to nature, to climate, to water? And there is an opportunity between now and the end of May. And I know that the Irish Environment Network are planning, I just heard it again informally from Niall Sargent, hustings around the country, in Carrigan, Shannon, in Dublin, in various places in Munster. So come to those meetings, and this idea of local politics, becoming involved locally. All parties should have nature on their agenda and local solutions. And the last two L words, and I'll finish on those, is language and love. Language, because it was discussed earlier today that some of the concept of natural capital can be abstract, can be a little bit academic, can be a bit remote, so we need to work. And there was lots of really good examples of making those concepts simpler by way of explaining benefits or co-benefits. You can translate some of the concepts, but it's absolutely crucial, keep it simple. And finally, Ella, this morning, Ella McSweeney, and later on Jessica Hamilton, and a number of people said, we love nature, we love coastlines, we love birds. This whole idea of the farmer's connection with the land, that bond that is still there, is very strong in this country, perhaps more than other countries. You have to work on that. And the final L then, which wasn't one of the first 7, is the word lobby or lobbies. And we heard that from John Gibbons and so on, that we also have to be a lobby ourselves, the people in the room. So the parting thing then is just the very last thing. Again, it wasn't something that was said formally at the meeting, but just as I overheard the 2 lads saying, fingers crossed, I heard somebody else saying that really the work starts at 5:30 tomorrow evening when we leave here and when we go away, that hopefully you will have had some sense of being energized, the kindling of energies, and that there is a lot of connections between these things that means the whole is greater than the sum of the part. So enjoy the evening. Thank you.